Hello guys, my name is Hugo, welcome to my channel. I'm Los Angeles based DP and this is my channel where I do content for filmmakers. I got my hands on new Panasonic GH6 and this video is gonna be mostly about my first impressions since I had this camera only for a couple days. I collaborated on this video with Armando, who also has a video which I'm gonna list in the description, so check it out, his video as well for sure. Even though I had it for a couple days, I had a list of things I want to talk about, and I'm mostly gonna be comparing this camera to Sony A7S III and the Canon R5 simply because those are the most popular cameras, and quite honestly this new Panasonic GH6 is absolutely capable of competing with those cameras. So let's talk about build quality. I really do like the build quality. I think it's really solid. When you feel this camera in hands, it feels like they didn't save on materials. I also do like a lot that it has two rec buttons. One is on the front side and one on the top, which is really cool because there is never too many rec buttons, because sometimes you put your camera in the places where you just need to reach, and it's very often it's hard to find a button on the top of the camera. So I really appreciate having a button in front of the body. I also do like that it has a cooling fan. So pretty much the camera has a cooling fan like a new Canon R5C, which means this GH6 doesn't have any overheating issues. And considering that this camera is capable of recording 5.7K, which is a lot, up to 60 FPS, not having any overheating issue is a plus. And thanks for CF Express memory cards, which I love a lot because first of all they're super fast and it helps you dump in the footage, but it also allows this camera to record ProRes HQ. So yeah, ProRes HQ. That's a big plus for me because I love recording in ProRes, even though the files are huge, but they always have incredible amount of data so you can work with. Even when you record in 1080, when you do it in ProRes, the quality is exceptional on any camera. So I do love ProRes a lot, and also ProRes is really good for client work because it doesn't matter what computer you have, ProRes will always work really well and really fast. And all editing software, they just love ProRes. So I really do like having the ProRes. And think about it, like there is like no R5, no A7S III. They don't offer ProRes. They offer their codecs, which are really hard to work with. And they, up until this day, even though I have my Pro computer that struggles working with the R5 footage, which pisses me off all the time. So I have to do some. I have to use my Atomos Shogun to do external recording so I can get this ProRes. So GH6 has it built in, which is incredible. And also it doesn't have any recording limits, so unlimited recording, which is a great plus as well. And also it has a shutter angle, which I don't understand why other cameras don't do this, because shutter angle is something I appreciate in camera a lot. I don't like working with the shutter speeds, not because I don't understand it, it's mostly because when you switch to between frame rates, like if you do and shoot different frame rates, like you shoot 24, then you decided to do some slow-mo, 60 or 120 FPS. When you have it shutter speed, you have to adjust it, and when you have a shutter angle, it always stays the same, and no matter when you switch between frame rates, your shutter angle is gonna be the same. Also, another thing that was really surprising to see in the GH6 is having a timecode in and out. If you think about it, having a timecode is a big thing. Like pretty often I do multicam setups, and in my multicam setups, I almost always use cameras that have timecode, simply because I need to sync them with audio and all that. For this reason, I'm not using my R5. Not because R5 is not capable of doing the work, but because, first of all, okay, it also has 30 minutes record limit, and it doesn't have a timecode, so I can't really sync it. So with GH6, I could have used this camera easily because it doesn't have any limits and it has a timecode. Plus, like if you think about it, the Komodo has a timecode as well, but Komodo has timecode only in, where GH6 also has out. So it's capable not only receive timecode, it's also capable of generating timecode. And if you don't have a timecode generator, if you don't have a clapper or a sound device that can produce a timecode, you can basically take GH6 and walk to your different cameras and jam it the timecode you have in your camera with other cameras, and that's really cool. Also, what's really cool that GH6 allows you to load custom LUTs, which is really great because most of the DSLR and the mirrorless cameras, the LUTs they have built in, the focus video assist LUT, they're usually far from true image. Usually when you see the image on camera and then you pull it on a computer and apply the manufacturer LUT, they usually look very different. So it's really good to have GH6 having a custom LUT upload function. The dynamic range, from my test comparing the A7S III and the Canon R5, in terms of dynamic range, I quite honestly didn't see much difference. I feel like they all pretty much within the same ballpark. But I simply didn't have much time to test this camera more thoroughly, therefore you need to check out Armando's test where he tested dynamic range, dynamic range boost mode. He also tested stabilization, which Panasonic camera is usually famous for. He also tested autofocus, which I think, as far as I know right now, it's the best autofocus in Panasonic cameras. So everyone who's with Panasonic cameras right now will be really happy. So check out Armando videos for sure. Color science. Again, Panasonic never had issues with color science. I think color science and colors in the Panasonic cameras were always spot on. I always compared Panasonic colors to Canon color science because maybe in some ways it's even more accurate, I think, because Canon usually applies some kind of special sauce to make it look good. But in terms of color accuracy, I think Panasonic was always the most color accurate colors. So I don't know. The skin tones look pleasant. I really did like Panasonic colors always, and this camera is not exception. The big thing also this camera has, it has anamorphic modes, and that's quite a big thing because again, A7S III and the R5, they don't have anamorphic mode, and it's really cool to have anamorphic mode because right now anamorphic lenses are getting more affordable, and it's really cool to try on some cool glass on your camera, and that's really nice to have a built-in D-squeeze in camera. Plus, if you think about it, like sensor size, yeah, I know it's still micro four third, which is quite a little sensor compared to others. But if you use it in anamorphics mode, you'll be surprised. But like, I'm gonna compare this to Red Komodo, yeah. When you do anamorphic modes, you're not actually using the full sensor because you're using only 4:3 or 6:5 ratio. And therefore you just use the portion, the middle portion, almost like a square portion of the sensor. So you cut the edges. With the micro four thirds sensors, it's really interesting, but the sensors dimensions is a little bit different. The aspect ratio of the sensor it's almost a square. Therefore, when you use anamorphic lenses, you use almost the whole real estate of the sensor. So basically, if you think about it from this perspective, you need to measure the height of the sensor, and the height of the sensor is only about 2 millimeters less than on Komodo. And believe me, Komodo is a big sensor. It's bigger than average Super 35. So therefore, when you just use anamorphic lenses, it actually makes a lot of sense using this camera because you basically get almost the same field of view as you get in the Red Komodo, which is pretty great. So I'm gonna show you some clips that I shot with the GH6, A7S III and R5 side to side. I color graded them together. I'm not gonna put signs at first. I'm gonna show it first, and then I'm gonna roll it again, and I'll tell you which camera is which. So enjoy it. So very interesting test, and many of my friends who I showed this video, they couldn't say a difference between those cameras, because this, yes, I know I purposely matched them, but that's kind of the whole purpose of this, that lately all cameras on the market, they're so good, and if you know how to use them, you can get pretty much all kind of results and the picture you'd like. And even though GH6 lacks in depth of field comparing to A7S III and R5, simply because they have full frame sensor, even though many of my friends, they couldn't say a difference. They couldn't bet their money to say which camera is which, and that kind of proves the point. And I know it's not a scientific test and the conditions maybe weren't perfect, but we used the same glass, we used PL lenses, we used RA Ultra Prime lenses, and we had to use 50mm on full frame cameras such as A7S III and R5, and we had to use 24mm on Micro Four Third, which is GH6, to match the field of view that we were getting. And the ISO wise, A7S III and R5, they had 800 ISO as a base, and we used the GH6 in the dynamic range boost mode, which makes your base ISO 2000. And quite honestly, I'm not sold a lot on this dynamic range mode, dynamic range boost mode, because you basically forced to use 2000 ISO, which is quite a lot, and I think the image is getting a little bit noisier. And the same issue Sony cameras they used to have when they had this high ISOs like 3200, then 2000, and they were getting lower these days. But I don't like to be forced using that high ISO. So when you turn off the dynamic range boost mode, you basically get the same base ISO, which is 800. And I quite honestly probably prefer this mode, just a standard mode, so since I can use just my normal ISO settings. But again, I didn't have much time to test it out, so maybe I'm wrong. So price. The camera is gonna be about 2200, and I think it's a very competitive price, considering that A7S III is at least 1,500 more expensive, and R5 is even more expensive. So considering that this camera is capable of doing some things, actually many things that other cameras cannot do, I think it's a really good price point. And quite honestly, you get a lot for the price. You get 5.7K resolution up to 60 FPS, you get ProRes, you get timecode, you get anamorphic modes, you get custom LUTs, you get no limits on recording, and no overheating issues. So I think this camera is gonna be desired by many people. And for those who already on Panasonic system, I think they will be happy to switch on this pretty capable camera. So I hope this information was useful for you. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.